walk of the wild ones, into the woods and the darkness. Rebirth the ways of the ancient ones whose tracks were washed away in blood. It falls to us now to open up and taste beyond what we've been fed. Take up the phoenix fire of cleansing, change to light the path instead. Follow the walk of the wild ones, into the woods and the darkness. Rebirth the ways of the ancient ones whose tracks were washed away in blood.
Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in today. First time back on the podcast in a very long time. I should even check when the last podcast episode was uploaded. I have been doing a little bit of YouTube, mostly some book reviews and posting some vlogs, I think, and other things. But I have not uploaded to the podcast. And this is something I plan to be coming back to at least weekly, if not more. There are so many stories and ideas and things I'd like to share on this platform. Vitaly and I would like to get on together and talk about astrology and other life things and yogic philosophy and our practice and homeschooling and parenting. What else? I have a few guests too that I would love to have on. Some people that I met in England and some of my other very inspiring entrepreneurial mom friends. So stay tuned for that content to come out. I'm sitting kind of at my desk is newly cleaned. We just put up a big new whiteboard up in my office/room. I like to say I'm sleeping in my office, not that I have my office in my room. We live in my in-laws' home, right? So in a strange way, it doesn't feel like our home just yet, although it is. It's like our living home for the time being that we're very grateful to be living in. But it does feel a little bit like an ashram, like a center, and our home will be coming to us later. Although I believe our home will always be an ashram center type thing for other people. I think it's how Vitaly and I are built and how we have created our life. I have just finished my tea. I was drinking herbs that I collected from the garden. So there were some dandelion that Radha actually helped me take out of the ground. That's part of our homeschooling or like home rhythm routine, is that they have to help me in the garden for 10-15 minutes a day with whatever needs to be done there. And some sumac berries that I had harvested over the winter. At the ashram in England, the Vipassana ashram that I went to, they had fresh tea made at every meal, and it was so lovely to have. For example, it would be marjoram or thyme or rosehip and mint, or rosemary, which was my favorite. Rosemary is one of my favorite plants. Sage tea was also great. And so that's a habit I'm trying to get into, that at every meal the kettle goes on, an herb goes into the teapot, and trying to keep it simple, which is tricky for me because I get excited and I just start putting a million things in the pot. But something simple, and put it on the table and get the kids exposed to it too. Of course, like just dandelion itself has so many, benefits. So all the plants do in their own way. So it's fun to work with them one-on-one even. I have also recently come across the theme of dieta, which is like a South American, I guess, practice of getting to know a plant or a medicinal plant, where they will go on a retreat or fast and simplify their life and work with one medicinal plant in a way to get to know it in a way that they're a being, and they channel songs and they download dreams in these times. And I feel like I've done that with some plants already. In my life, I have had periods where I really focus on one plant at a time. Like this winter was mugwort and wormwood, and right now I'm working with chickweed to see if it will rectify a cyst. Also, by the way, this is probably best if little ears are, let's say 4+ when they start understanding things. I would highly recommend having headphones in. I will not hold back from swearing if that feels like it needs to come about, or talking about, some more adult topics. I had a friend use chickweed to heal cysts on her ovaries. She used that plant and actually got the before and after ultrasounds and rectified cysts on her ovaries. I, was trying to get organized with what I was going to talk about today. Definitely going to focus on my Vipassana experience and England, likely a part 1. But I've already been home for 2 weeks from that trip. Maybe even almost coming up to 3 weeks. Time goes by so fast. And I feel like there's other things to update you on, namely that my work has kind of shifted again. So back in August, I started working for a company that sells PEMF Sequex mats, which are amazing, and infrared lights and other things. And there's a German biofeedback machine. So I was working for them starting this summer in August, and that has kind of shifted and slowed down for different reasons. I'm still connected with them, working more on like a contract basis and like what do they call it, subcontractor, but still, looking to continue to learn about PEMF and how that affects the body. And it definitely helped me tremendously with the burnout that I went through last year. And that hasn't been talked about on the podcast. I feel like I will do a whole podcast episode about burnout and coming out of it and landing on the other side, which I feel like I'm still kind of doing. In an interesting way, I do find the life rhythm that we're getting back into now resembles a lot what I was doing a year or 2 ago. And that is, part of that is what led to the burnout. So I feel like I have some trauma and residual stuff in my body and nervous system that are that are triggered by what I'm falling back into now. And it's an interesting thing to navigate during Vipassana. I took a few days. So Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. I will get into those details more. The man who did this style of Vipassana is called Goenka, is his last name. Goenka G like Ji is what you would call like a teacher. Like you add that as a suffix, I guess, at the end of a word to like Guruji is like, it's like dear teacher or something like that. So Goenka Ji just means that you're honoring him as a teacher, a little bit as a guru teacher type symbol. Anyway, he's the one who brought it to the West from Burma, this style and the system of teaching meditation. And he says 10 days is the minimum amount of time that you need to start to access the subconscious mind and to really shift the mind at a deep, deep level. And I would agree with this 10-day thing. I think we could even stretch that to 40 days. Apparently they have 45-day programs, I believe, but you need to have done some prerequisites. I was talking, and I don't know if this is available online. It's not something they really talk about. I guess you have to start asking more questions to some people when you can. For me, it was on the last day. And I was asking one of the servers there, and she was the one who told me they have 45-day advanced programs, but in order to access that, you need to have completed 3 10-day Vipassanas and served at one 10-day one. And then I think there's an 8-day intensive where maybe you go deeper, and then you can access this 45-day one. But yeah, and I think 40 days is a very important amount of time for like very, very significant transformations. I think of like Jesus being in the desert for 40 days, or Lent being 40 days. Well, yeah, because of Jesus' experience. But even in Eastern teachings, there's this 6-week, 40-day period. I think of like postpartum being 40 days, and 6 weeks is halfway. It's like halfway of a season, right? So 6 weeks is halfway of 3 months, more or less. And so it's like, what would it be? An eighth of a solar cycle. And I think there's something important to that. So in the first few days of Vipassana, I found that my mind was still thinking about and kind of stressing about life, and then that really passed, and you really get in the zone, and like everything falls away. And that's where and when and why you can do a really deep shift, and surgery is what he calls it. So thanks to that, and then also having 4 beautiful days in the Glastonbury, Avebury area of England, I was really feeling chill in my body. I had like almost no stress except for when I was trying to drive on the left side of the road. And then when I came back, it was kind of landing, coming back. You don't really have to jump into life just yet. I mean, I didn't really, I didn't have work starting on Monday. I was diving slowly back into life with the kids and everything. But then the second week, then, I guess we had some activities and different things. And then this week, we're really kind of jumping in back into homeschooling and our entrepreneurial work with, everything that we've been working on for 12, 13 years, truly. Getting back into it. And yeah, like I said, I do have, like right now, I do feel some anxiety and stress in my body mostly around it working out. And also 2 years when I was doing this, I mean, I was still nursing a baby. The children were younger and smaller. There was a period where Vitaly was out of work, and we were basically accumulating debt while we were trying to get, put out this content and do this work. And I was holding mother circles and not charging. And so that, that was a very, very difficult time. And I was overdoing it with like homeschooling. Oh, I'm choking up. And so, but we're back here. Why? Because this is the stuff that does turn on my soul. It's what I constantly get drawn back to. It's what I want to teach and share, and I find what people want to hear. It is what it is. And this time is different. Vitaly does have other work that is sustaining us. I technically have other work since I'm still doing some subcontracting for this company. So we have some sources of more of, some income coming in on top of this kind of stuff. And we have more experience. But I don't know about you. I'm noticing in my friend group and in my community that a lot of, mostly my women friends, are kind of coming back to feeling like they, on the outside, like they're in the same place that they were 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 4 years ago. They're like, I'm right back at the same place. I'm single again. One of my friends is moving back into the same home she lived in like 5 years ago. And it's wild. It's wild to me. And it's almost like we're meeting these edges, and it's God giving us an opportunity to break through some of these barriers in our own minds, around these challenges or challenging situations. I'm not sure. I know that, I had another friend who had this feeling of frustration and despair of like, I'm here again, and it's like I wake up in the morning and I'm depressed again and nothing has changed. And these beliefs that we have in our mind. And I think it's so important to remember that almost everything has changed. Almost everything has changed. You're one day older. The celestial bodies have moved in the sky. The earth has moved. The whole solar system has moved through the galaxy a little bit. Nature outside has definitely changed. Children have grown older. It's absolutely different, So it's funny. I mean, even I have that come up in my mind, like we're back here again with like financial stress and trying to do the same work, that I have this belief that like doesn't work in my mind. It doesn't generate income for us, and this same quote unquote like stupid passion and determination to keep doing this work. But and this is quite vulnerable sharing, but I think it's an important lead up to sharing about my trip and why I went on my trip, and making life to be more about life and soul and spirit and giving and loving than the financial bottom line. Because you could spend 20 years, really struggling, and then and then it blossoms, the work and the determination blossoms. And then you're in a really good place because you've set your life up and you've built a foundation for your life in a way that is heart-led and spirit-led, rather than following the rat race and following, what everyone is caught up in doing. And I had a dream about this, and there was one story about a man I met in Glastonbury that relates to this. And I hope some of this is interesting to you. So my dream was that this was like, I returned from Glastonbury on the Thursday, and this dream was the Sunday night. So I had some very interesting dreams in the last few days, in Glastonbury and upon my return, where I dreamt that I was in like a mall that was also a working, like a workspace. Interesting. So it's combining the commercialism of like a shopping mall and also this, working environment of corporate and whatever into the same place. And it was these narrow hallways and escalators, and it was like hundreds of people pushing and shoving to work their way through the labyrinth. It was like a race, I guess. And I was in it too. I was pushing and shoving, and my biggest reaction in my dream was not like, I hate this place, or the energy here is awful, or these people. It was the fact that I was participating. It was the fact that I was in this environment and allowing this environment to make me act in a way that I didn't want to act, where I was pushing and shoving. I was like trying to get ahead and pushing someone back behind me. And it's like a firm commitment in my life to not do that. But I was doing that in my dream. So it was kind of a shocking thing that it was pulling this reality or this part of my psyche out of me, making it very obvious. And I realized later, like reflecting on the dream, that it's really something I don't want to participate in. I believe that humans can create an economy and use money as a tool for exchanging value, in a way that is sacred, in a way that is ecological, in a way that respects our humanity, in a way that is generous. I believe that humans can do that. I don't think we're very far away from that, actually. And the number one way to make that happen as a reality for all humans is to live it. And that means not participating and not allowing these stories and fears and beliefs to drive my actions in this world, you know. So that is part of the reflections. And although I still feel this lingering anxiety in my body at the moment, you know, like what do I feel? I feel tension in my forehead. I feel tension in my chest. I feel tension in my shoulders. I feel tension in my head. And these were all things I didn't feel for 2 weeks, and even the week after I got back. So they're very obvious to me now. They're very much like they feel foreign, which is good because I think a lot of people live in stress and live with these tensions and don't even know what it feels like in the body to not live with this. I do believe QHHT is an amazing practice for touching on, relaxing the body into a state where you can feel what you feel like without it. But yeah, and I'm committed to finding out how I can live my life and develop a routine and a beingness, a way of being where where I can be in the world without it. And I feel like Vitaly has kind of tapped into that. It's more in his temperament. He is kind of like, if you try to scare him, you know how people do, what is it called? Jump scare. You cannot get Vitaly. I will try. I will try. I will come back to you guys and tell you that I have tried in the last week. I cannot jump scare Vitaly, no matter how hard I try. He is like a chill, grounded, phlegmatic, earth and water based personality. I'm all fire. I'm quite a mix of all the things. And also have a lot of tension in my mind and in my body. And these were habits that I came out of during Vipassana and that I'm slowly coming back into, but also they feel foreign. So, I can fall back into despair of feeling like I'm back at the same place, but I'm not. And if you're feeling that way, you are not as well. Every day is different. I like to see it as like, we think we've come to, what's the word? Like a wall in a labyrinth, we've come up against the same wall, the same dead end over and over and over again. But I did this beautiful finger labyrinth at this church at St. Margaret's Chapel in Glastonbury. And it's all curves and it's beautiful and you follow around the finger with a finger. I'm going to post a reel about that on Instagram soon. And there's never a dead end. It's a continuous path, although it doesn't look like it, with all these curves. And you end up you actually don't end up in the middle. You end up at a corner. I did it with my eyes closed. And when I opened my eyes, I was so shocked to find myself up in the right quadrant corner, rather than in the middle. So that labyrinth, I think, to me shows, it's never a dead end. It's always a turn and a curve. And when you go around the curve with your finger, with your eyes closed, and often when we're moving through life, because we don't know what's coming, because we don't know exactly what the path looks like, it's like doing a labyrinth with your eyes closed. And I found that the more I slowed down and I didn't rush, the easier it was to go around the corners. So I think these corners invite us to slow down. It's never a dead end. And also we're likely not ending up where we think, but we are ending up somewhere and we are advancing along a path, no matter how windy and turny we find it to be. So I wanted to start with why I went on this trip in the first place. Like I said, the last 2-3 years have been really tough. Homeschooling the other my two older girls, with Theo being a baby, was way harder than I expected it to be. and holding the 3 children at home, trying to hold down the home, and also trying to make money, and having financial stress, and having family stress, to be honest, which is just a theme in my life, in this life, with this personality that I have, was a lot. And it culminated to a pretty serious depression this fall. And this winter, I was looking to make some big changes in my life, that I will talk about maybe in the future. Some of my close friends know kind of what was happening. And it was Vitali's idea. He said, "You need a full break." I had kind of mentioned this to my parents, my dad. I had said, I just need I need a vacation. We haven't been able to afford it. Neither of us. We haven't been on a plane in like 8 years. I need a trip. I need to get out of my routine. I need like a real vacation. And, there are people in my family who could have helped with something like that and didn't. And it's for the better, I think, in the end, that we found a way to do it ourselves. And Vitali is like transitioning jobs a little bit. So he was on call for his work, still getting paid full time. So he didn't have to take any time off. And we had a little extra money, enough for me to pay for my flight to go to England. And also Vipassana is a donation-based experience, and you don't have to pay right away. For better or for worse, I guess. But Vitaly and I have decided that we will pay it, over time, maybe send a little bit of money every few months. We have an amount that we kind of know we would like to contribute. And also I plan on serving at a full 10-day course in the future. And also considering all of the community work that I have done, because I sat with this. I was like, how much are we giving for this? All the community work that I have done, all of the work I have done for my family and my children, I felt like it was okay for us to not send any money right away and to, take our time with that for when that becomes available to us. So that meant that what we had to figure out was a flight. And then I did spend through 4 days kind of traveling. I rented a car. In England, they say hire a car. I hired a car. And stayed 3 nights and traveled around the prehistoric sites and like sacred sites around Glastonbury. So in that way, it was a 2-week trip that was really cheap, and I feel so lucky for that and so grateful that an opportunity like that exists. And it is something that I would like to create for others, one day. I think there's maybe better ways to set it up economically than they have it set up. But yeah, I'm extremely grateful, and it means that I have a great responsibility to use that experience for my own benefit and my own, well-being on all levels, and then for that to pour onto others. So it was Vitali's idea, and we do have Vipassana centers here in Canada. We actually have one 40 minutes away, but it was full. Apparently, if you get yourself on a wait list, it's pretty certain that you'll be able to get a spot if you apply to, there's a center just outside of Montreal, between Montreal and Ottawa, and there's one near Barrie, Ontario. So apparently if the wait list is full, it's pretty easy to get in. But Vitali said, you need to get to Europe. I have been craving for Europe. I love going to Europe. Thank you to my grandparents who brought me there when I was 10 years old. They brought grandchildren in different groups. So I went with my cousin, and they would sometimes take 2 or 3 grandchildren at a time. They did that with 10 out of their 12 grandchildren. brought them to Europe. My grandmother was English and Welsh, and my grandfather was German, and they were like first generation immigrants to Canada. Or does that count when they came when they weren't born in Canada? I guess my mom is first generation. I'm second generation on that side. And it was very important for them to know our country's stories. And so when we went, I went to England and Wales and France with them. They ended up taking like my brother and sisters to England and Germany. But I think I'm one of the only cousins that went to Wales and France as part of my trip. And it has created a long-lasting connection to those lands for me. I've been to France, in my early 20s, I was lucky to do a number of trips to France and to connect with those lands. And I didn't even understand really in my 20s the significance of that. I studied in Nottingham, England, for a semester during school, which was a huge priority for me when I went to university, was to be able to go on an exchange. So I had lived, I've been to England, I guess, before. And so Vitaly knew that I needed to get back to my ancestral lands. And it was a great, great, great prayer of mine for 2-3 years for that to be able to happen. And so he said, we need to just get you there, and I will be home with the kids. I will be fine. He was still getting his full-time pay and being on call for work, where he could like pop out for work or bring the kids in the van, give them a movie while they're, in the car while he's going and fixing something. He does like maintenance for property management. And that's how we sorted it out. And I know that there will be people listening with more financial means and less financial means. I feel very grateful to be in this range of all these, humans I know with different means. And I know that many, especially mothers with young children and families who are choosing to homeschool and living on one income, don't have this kind of opportunity. So I felt an extreme amount of gratitude while I was there. And it's funny because at Vipassana on the last day, you can talk with your roommates. And one of the girls sleeping above me actually ended up leaving on the 10th day as soon as the silence was lifted. She had like a panic attack on the 10th day and really felt like she couldn't stay, which was interesting. And so talking with the others, I had told them, I was like, yeah, I haven't, been able to travel in 8 years. I haven't gotten on a plane. And they all looked at me like, what? What do you mean? Why? None of them had children. They were, I think, all over 30 and working. And one was married. The other two were single. And they couldn't understand how that could be part of your life reality. And I'm there with 3 young children who I'm homeschooling, and I'm like, yeah, that's the reality of a number of people. And I hope that they learned about that. I traveled home from London to Canada. The guy sitting beside me, was an adult, maybe approaching 30, around 30, and he had never been on a plane in his life. Born and raised in London, and this was his first time flying to visit family and friends in Toronto. And I think it's very important to know the privilege of being able to travel and having the financial means to get on a plane and go somewhere. Even being allowed to leave the country. I remember during COVID days, because of our choices, not like being allowed to fly and leave the country was a very scary feeling. And there are people living in other countries who can't get visas to get into Europe or get into all these places. It's an extremely small percentage of people who are, easily flying around the world multiple times a year or whatever, compared to like what humans can access on this planet. So I think it's very important to mention that. And that being said, I do pray for more travel because, man, I love it. I love flying. I love getting on planes. I love being in different places. I thought I would, struggle with like the lack, like not being in my home routine and not being with my home things, but I did not at all. It was amazing. I wanted to share one last thing. So in February, I got these new tattoos. I got an Om tattoo redone on my left inner wrist, which I had done like a number of years ago in my early 20s. And I got a new Ankh tattoo, which is the Egyptian key of life, on my right inner wrist. And the day that Vitali was saying, like, you need to go on a trip, you need to go do Vipassana in England, I found an ashram that has openings on its wait list. You need on its registration. You need to apply today, and you need to go do that trip. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we can't afford that. We can't do that. I need to work. I can't do that. Like, I would love to. I'd want to do Vipassana this spring. I don't think it's possible. He's like, no, we must do this. We must figure this out for you. You need this break. You need this experience. And there was an Ankh graffiti on the wall as he was saying that. It was wild. It was like right there on the wall. And in Glastonbury, someone had put a bunch of little ankhs near one of the springs. And so all that were little winks from the universe. And I mean, it is like a spiritual symbol that would be in Glastonbury, but I think it was written in charcoal on this wooden fence. So it's not going to last forever. And it's also an Egyptian symbol to be in, this English place. But anyway. So we were all like, oh, that's a sign, you have to go. And I'm like, oh, signs, fuck signs. Who knows what's real and what's not? But maybe it was a wink from the universe. And I ended up going. So that was the vibe and energy I was going to Vipassana with. I have three friends who have done the experience, the 10-day silent retreat. And they talked to me a little about it beforehand. Apparently there's this, I've heard from them that there's, I guess, a rule of not talking too much about your experience, to not interfere with other people. They told me no such thing in England. So I'm going to not talk about all of the details and what the technique entails, but I'm going to talk about quite a bit of it because I think a lot of it can be valuable for those who are thinking about doing it, and also for those who might never do it in their life but will gain something from what I share. So let's get into Vipassana. When you arrive on the first day, so it's actually 12 nights of sleeping there, 12 sleeps, and so 10 complete full days. Like, they are not joking about 10 days. It's like, there is no cheating on this 10-day things. It is 24 hours, 10 24-hour days, which means you need a sleep on every end of this 10-day thing. So you arrive on the Wednesday, and which is day 0. Yes, you arrive on the Wednesday, which is day 0, in the afternoon, and you can like chat with people, and you get your stuff, you sign in, you get your locker, you put all your stuff away in your locker. You give them back the key, you give them your phone, so you have no access to phone, you have no outside communication for 10 days. You get your room. If your roommates are there, you get to meet your roommates. So there were 3 women that I did not get to speak to before we started, who were in my room, which was interesting. It was a room with 6 3 bunk beds, so for 6 people in one room. Apparently at the Barrie location, in the women's area, you have like a curtain between each bed, so you're not really sharing a common space with people. And in the men's section in Barrie, they have their own bathrooms, so they have ensuite rooms, which is like, wow, that's really nice. I think the reason that this place maybe had less signups is because it's maybe less fancy, more basic of a location, but for me it was perfect. It was set in the countryside near the small town of Stowmarket, England. And so the women and the men's areas are completely separate. You do not interact with the men at all. The dining area is completely separate. Everyone has walking paths that you can walk on, and the men's and women's walking areas are completely separate. You don't even see each other. The only time we see the men is in the meditation hall, where it's like the women on one side and the men on the other, and there's no divider, so you can see them. Apparently they're building a new meditation hall in Barrie with like these kind of eggs, in first on a first class plane, you know how you kind of have like your own little bubble that you're in. Apparently that's what they're building at the Barrie location. I have to say, I did enjoy feeling the group energy. I sat at the back, so when you sit in the hall, you have the same meditation spot for the whole time. There were like 55, maybe 60 women students, and I would say maybe 40 men to start. I think there were 6 or 7 men who dropped off, and maybe more, maybe like 10, I don't know, 7 to 10 men who dropped off, who didn't make it through the whole thing. And women, there were 5, I think, who left. 1 in my room. And it seemed to be the younger ones who didn't stay. So yeah, I'm just trying to tell you a little bit about the setup. The silence drops on the evening. I think you have dinner, you can talk at dinner, and then you have a meditation period in the evening and a discourse, and that's when the silence drops. And the silence is no talking, no gesturing, no eye contact. It's supposed to be none of that. Those are the rules. And I think over time, it takes a while to understand that. There were a few returning students. So there were, I think, like 15 women who were returning, and maybe half of the men who were returning men. So that means they had done at least one Vipassana before. They're called old students. They don't get any dinner. They are not allowed to eat past noon. So you get a breakfast at 6:30 a.m. and you get a meal at 11 a.m. and then you get tea in the evening. We had 2 pieces of fruit. So I would have like an apple and a banana, or an orange and a banana in the evening. Honestly, it was enough food because you're not moving very much, and you're learning to calm the mind, and you're not talking very much. Talking, I'm realizing, takes a lot of energy, I think, especially if it's unconscious. Like after this podcast episode, I'm going to be tired, and I'm going to need rest. So I'm going to need quiet, and I'm going to need to not talk. So you're doing less, so you need less food. It is all vegetarian food. We had oatmeal with yogurt and boiled prunes in the morning, and there was fruit and toast. I thought it was an incredible breakfast. They had, again, like I said, the teas. They had jams and peanut butter and Marmite, which is this like yeast thing that's like super dark brown and very salty. And I think they created it in the war for like the soldiers in the wartime. When I lived in Nottingham, I loved Marmite, and I put it on butter and on my toast, and I absolutely loved it. And I just had that full breakfast this morning because it was an amazing breakfast. There were no eggs, which was a little surprising. They did have coffee and black tea, and they have this like chicory barley powder thing that you can put in a drink that is delicious. I remembered that from being in England, and you can put milk and honey, and it is delicious. I had that a few days, and then I was like, I don't need this treat. I really love my rosemary tea or thyme tea or whatever they had. So that's the food situation. The dinners were like, they had beans a lot of the nights. They had a baked potato night. They had a pasta night. They had a curry night. the food, oh, and they had salad, fresh salad at every meal. The food was incredible, and to not have to cook like was incredible. I want to learn about how they get organized for all that food stuff, how they plan the meals for that number of people. So I look forward to serving one day to learn about that. So there were a few people that I did speak to that day, and they ended up being people I went back to on the last day to connect with, which was really nice. Um, I did have someone in my room who was like very smiley, who smiled to everyone, and I did find it distracting. It was weird, like the day 3, 4, I was like, oh, like, this is my friend, and I had this little routine of going to see the stars and walking around the grounds before going to bed after the evening discourse. And I don't think anybody else was doing that. And I was like, oh, like my friend who's smiling to me, do I like sneakily kind of tell her to come see the stars with me? And I was like, no, like, you're not here for that. You're not here, this is your experience. Don't. And other people mentioned to her afterwards, oh, it was so nice, your smile, it was, it made me feel so good and all these things. And I realized how distracting that was to everybody, actually, even though people said it felt nice. It was a distraction because you're really going there for your personal experience. I think in an ideal world, you would go like alone with a guru in the woods, but that is harder to navigate where you have your food prepared for you and everything. So they're trying to create like a solitary experience. They're trying to mass create a solitary experience. So if this is one of the things I would do differently next time, would be to be very serious about not looking at people. The teachers were incredible about that. Like, so Goenkaji is the man who created Vipassana. There are video lectures of him, a 1 hour, more or less, video lecture of him every day. And then there are teachers who are, I guess, like the support staff. They sit up at the front they're a bit raised so that they can see everybody, I think, and they're wearing whitish colors. And for us, our teacher was an older woman named Paula with beautiful white hair, and the men had this older like Asian woman. I called her Guruji, very short, always wearing white, buzzed hair. So she looked like a Buddhist monk. And she, walked with her head down. She walked very slowly. I never spoke to her the whole time I was there, but her presence taught me a lot. And she walked very slowly, and she had her head on the ground, and she did not look at anyone. And Paula had a little bit more of like a warmer, friendlier energy, maybe. But she also, didn't look at anyone. We didn't have dinner with them. We didn't see them at meals. And I got to speak to Paula at the end on the last day, on the Sunday when we were leaving. She had her suitcase. She was wearing her normal clothes. She was bubbly and bright. And I asked her a little bit about, what she was doing. She was heading back to work on Monday. She's a trained occupational therapist and is a support worker for, like a charity that brings art therapy and all these therapies into hospitals. That's her work. And I'm like, wow, like she's kind of a semi-regular person in the world who just took 10 days to teach this course and was an incredible teacher for the 15 minutes that I got to speak to her, because you can sign up for question time with the teacher every day. There's like a sign up sheet. And you get maybe 5 minutes, if that, because there's a long list of people to go through. There's only an hour available. And some people, when they were at the end of the list, didn't even get a chance to talk to the teacher that day. So that's the amount of time you spend with the teacher. But what I learned from her, from Goenkaji, from the way everything was set up was incredible and so valuable to me. What else am I going to share? See, if I stick to an hour, there's about 10 minutes left, and I guess I'm going to have to do a part 2 that is solely about Vipassana, and then a part 3 that is about Glastonbury area, which was, yeah, I was basically crying from the last 2 days of Vipassana to the day I left. I think I cried every day, tears of joy, gratitude, love, healing, feeling seen. Yeah, like beautiful, positive tears. So let's get back. If I have 10 minutes, I'll focus on the first 2-3 days of Vipassana. I was jet lagged. So So waking up at the gong goes off at 4 a.m. Waking up at 4 a.m. when you're jet lagged was like, instead of a 5-hour difference that I was working with, it was like 8 hours difference. Uh, and I slept through, so I made it like up for the first 4:30 a.m. meditation. Then I went back to bed and I missed breakfast. And then there was an 8 a.m. group sit. So there's basically 3 meditations throughout the day that are mandatory. You have to be there for the group sit. And they will come find you. They will come find you. You cannot miss it. And I was sleeping, so she came and woke me up, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm jet lagged. And like, making my way to the hall. And the second day, I almost missed lunch. So I made it to breakfast, and then I went to the mandatory group sit, and then I went back to my room and fell asleep and almost missed lunch completely. And there was one of the days, I can't remember which one it was, that I was pissed. And in the discourse, he had said something about it being like, you're here for hard work. You're here for surgery of the mind. You're here, and I was like, fuck, I don't want to fucking work. I'm so fucking tired. I'm here to rest, here to recuperate. And there was a lot of anger. There was actually quite a bit of anger that had to come out the first 2-3 days. Anger at, some people, some family members, culture. I went to go ask the teacher, and I was like, how is this going to help towards the injustice of the world towards mothers, because I have so many mother friends who are really struggling right now. And I feel it's because our culture is not set up to support families and, women and mothers, especially, to mother our children well, and then everybody suffers. So it's something that angers me and angered me quite a bit. I also had an interesting frustration come up around the people I know who have done Vipassana. And I was like, they still have problems in their lives. They're still stressed. They're still like trying to figure things out, and they've done Vipassana. So if it didn't help them, like, why am I here? And is this going to help me? And I can answer that question now, of course. Like, of course it helped them. Every Vipassana helped them and improved their life in some way. And a lot of them are doing really hard, tough, incredible things that they are navigating, and probably wouldn't be able to navigate with such grace without having these experiences. So that is my answer to that. But it's interesting what kind of things can anger you. Of course, there was pain in sitting for 5 hours a day in, some kind of a meditation posture. You're definitely moving around quite a bit on those first days for a whole hour. I had never sat for a whole hour in meditation. At the ashram, when we did our yoga teacher training, we had to sit for 30-minute periods, once in the morning and once in the evening, and that was torturous. And I had tried to sit for meditation on my own in my room, and I could only last like 10-15 minutes, really. That was huge for me. Vitali, before leaving, was like, maybe you should try to do an hour, before you go. He was a bit worried and concerned. And my friend Kat, who has done Vipassana, she was like, no, she'll be fine. She doesn't need to do it. Like, they will hold her through the process. And that is something I will say. I did feel very held. Like, they have, clearly a lot of experience bringing people through this experience. And And it's set up in a way that it builds on itself every day. And it does suck. It's something you just have to go through in some ways, but then it's also blissful. Like I did have a full ecstatic, orgasmic, full body blissful state that I touched on day 7. And I will dive more into that in part 2 that you'll have to stay for. I will say maybe as I close that there was this one woman, an older woman, with white hair, the only one with full white hair except for teacher Paola G, who, so I would say maybe 70 years old, that I did speak to on the first day. She said she had done Vipassana once before in that location and had to leave on the 7th day because of health problems. And so she was back like a year or 2 later in the same location to complete it and try to complete it this time. And on the first day, so on day 1, I see her walking with someone who ended up becoming a friend, walking with another woman, and her face all bloodied, like her nose just, and like mouth, like there was just blood all over her face. Not funny, but she, I found out later, I spoke to her on the 10th day, she had had a fall, and she had a fear of falling. And after that fall, she no longer had a fear of falling. She fell like in the walking paths and wiped out, and she had a bruise on her face the whole rest of the time there. And she stayed the whole time. She stayed the whole 10 days this time. She was sitting on a chair. You can ask for chairs. Anyone can ask for chairs. I got a little bit frustrated about that at one point because people who looked like they didn't need chairs were sitting on chairs. And at one point I asked for a chair on day 5, at least to watch the lecture, because at the end of the day, like that, sitting on the lectures where I was just struggling. And there were also these backrests that you could get. And some people had backrests at their sit spot, and then they also get to sit on a chair for the discourse. I was like, hey guys, I want a chair. I never got my chair. I never got a backrest either. And I'm glad I didn't. I didn't really need it. So bless the people who need the chairs and who sat on the chair. This lady needed a chair. She made it through the whole thing. She also had, so she was, I think there were 2 other people from North America there. Apparently someone from Quebec, Montreal that I never found, a woman, but this woman, the older woman, was from New York. So she had a cool New York accent, and she was wearing this beautiful scarf with a monarch butterflies on it. And the monarch butterfly is a symbol for me right now, an animal totem that I feel very close to. And I can maybe get into that later, but I felt like I was in this chrysalis period, this last 2-3 years, where the caterpillar becomes jelly and is completely disintegrated in order to be able to come out of the chrysalis and become a butterfly. And I felt like this winter I was kind of coming out of the chrysalis. I felt like a winter butterfly kind of waking up in winter. Thanks to the technology at work, I didn't feel very drained this winter. The infrared lights there are incredible. And feeling like a butterfly, and a monarch butterfly that was going on a very long migration. And monarch butterflies are interesting because the butterfly that makes it from Canada to Mexico, and they all go to the same forest in Mexico. All the monarch butterflies go to the same location, I think so, in Mexico. There's one butterfly that makes it from Canada to Mexico. Now, on the way back up, like right now, I think they're already arriving and they're making their way back up. It takes them 3 to 4 generations to make it from Mexico to Canada. And then in the summer, there's 3 generations in the summer. So it's like the 7th generation is the super butterfly that makes its way from Canada to Mexico. And in a sense, in some ways, I feel like that super generation butterfly that is going to accomplish a lot for my lineage in this time. Maybe that's egoic. I don't know. My grandparents who went through World War II probably did quite a bit of work too. Regardless, I felt like that butterfly doing a huge migration, and especially with these changes I was planning in my life to maybe move into my own place and all these things, I felt like this super generation monarch butterfly, which I will explain the kind of interesting twist and end to that story probably at the end of part 3 of this series. So this woman had monarch butterflies on her scarf, and because I was sitting at the back of the group, I could see her show up, even though she wiped out and really hurt herself and was bruised and probably in a ton of pain in her face. And with these butterflies on her scarf sitting there, and she didn't miss a sit. She was there every time. I think she was there even for the optional sits. She was very inspirational. And that's why if I had this like eggshell thing where I couldn't see the people around me, I think it would be really hard. I could definitely feel the energy of my partners beside me, and the people I could look at in front of me gave a ton of energy in the hard moments to just keep showing up. And that was kind of the message too so at the beginning of the hour-long meditations, Guruji, there would be a recording that would be played where he would give you like a prompt, and sometimes it was shorter, sometimes it was longer. On the last days, it's pretty short. It's like, begin, and then you're left for the hour. But in the first few days, it's start again. Do not despair, do not give in to despair, do not give in to drowsiness, do not give in to anger. Start again. Be here now. Be here with your breath. Start again. And then you sit for an hour. So I'm going to leave it at that. There are a few more interesting stories and takeaways from the whole Vipassana experience, which I will probably spend another hour on. And then there is sharing about the incredible Glastonbury journey and a baptism naked in a spring in a temple, where the source was, the spring was coming out of the mountain with other people around, but naked in a sacred space, and all the takeaways from that I will share in probably part 3. If you have questions or comments about this first little part, don't hesitate to send them my way, probably via email, or I think you can comment on Spotify as well. Share these episodes if they feel useful, and please do connect. So thanks for tuning in, everyone, and I will get back to you shortly.
Follow the walk of the wild ones into the woods and the darkness. Rebirth the ways of the ancient ones whose tracks were washed away in blood. It falls to us now to open up and taste beyond what we've been fed. Take up the phoenix fire of cleansing, change to light the path instead. Follow the walk of the wild ones into the woods and the darkness. Rebirth the ways of the ancient ones whose tracks were washed away in blood. It falls to us now to open up and taste beyond what we've been fed. Take up the phoenix fire of cleansing, change to light the path instead. Step by step through the unknown, I'll be your light and you'll be mine. In darkness let love light the way to feed the soil of changing times. Step by step through the unknown, I'll be your light and you'll be mine. In darkness let love light the way to feed the soil of changing times. Follow the walk of the wild ones into the woods and the darkness. Rebirth the ways of the ancient ones whose tracks were washed away in blood. It falls to us now to open up and taste beyond what we've been fed. Take up the phoenix fire of cleansing, change to light the path instead. Step by step through the unknown, I'll be your light and you'll be mine. In darkness let love light the way to feed the soil of changing times. Step by by step through the unknown. I'll be your light and you'll be mine. In darkness let love light the way to feed the soil of changing times.